Hey there, we're going to do our larger than life project, and I just wanted to show you how we can make things look like they're more integrated into our images when we do composites. So I've taken this nice, beautiful picture of this roach, nice cockroach here, and I'm going to integrate it into this picture to make it look like it's like sort of behind this board a little bit, and so that the kid goes in front. Well, the cockroach is on a layer in front of all of this, so it's not possible for that to happen. But we want to make it look like this all was in the same picture. So to do that, we're going to use a tool or a technique, if you will, called layer via copy. And there's layer via copy, layer via cut. They do the same thing basically. But so what you're going to do is you're going to identify the area that you want to, I'm going to call it promote, like to promote to a new layer, to put it in front of. So I'm going to grab a hold of this diving board. And again, on these situations, it's, whatever tool you're most comfortable with, but it's going to need to be a pretty good selection. So, you may have to switch tools up here and there. I'm going to go polygon lasso to try to fix some of this. But anyway, you're just going to go ahead and select your item. And you may not need to select all of it. It just kind of depends. Like, I'm really only going to need it to go in front of his leg right here. So I really only need this area. So the rest of this isn't going to totally matter. But I'm one of those people who doesn't like to not at least sort of mostly have it in here correctly. So I'm going to go ahead and fix this a little bit. Okay, that's probably good. We'll see. We can always paint in some additional stuff if we were using masks. But for this, we don't necessarily have to use a mask. So we have a couple of options. One of those is to simply use what's called layer via copy. Now, layer via copy is not going to give you a mask. So if I click layer via copy right now, which is perfectly fine, it's only going to give me this little chunk. And I can drag it up, and then that chunk will now be in front of the leg, which is exactly what I wanted it to do here. Now, that's perfectly fine, and I use layer via copy sometimes for things, particularly like this. But just know that you do not have a layer mask attached to that. So it's not the perfect answer. You can do it, and I do it lots of times. So here's my copied layer. I'm just going to leave that one there and turn it off. And I'm going to do this again, but I'm going to do it the other way. Now, since I just had something selected, I can actually go back up here to select and reselect sometimes, and it will work. Clearly, this one's not going to let me, so I'm going to have to reselect this on my own. So I'm going to select this again, and then show you a way to do it using one other method. This way, we would actually still get our layer masks like we're used to having. Again, it's not that one way is better than the other, but if you want it to be, reversible and fixable, then you might want to go with this second option. So now I'm going to go out to select and mask, which we use all the time. And I can touch this up and, fix everything in here however I want. But what we're looking at down here is layer. So what we can do is we can say, put this on a new layer, which is like copying it via layer, like put a copy on a new layer. And if I did this, just plain new layer, it would do the same thing as when I right clicked it. But in here, we have the option for new layer with a layer mask. So when I hit OK, now watch carefully, it's going to turn off my original background, but it's still there. And then this is my new layer with the mask. This is this layer. So this is the diving board, and I could paint on this layer if I needed to pull in more of the diving board. See? There we go. So that's probably the most efficient way because you can go in and fix it, but you can also just right click and make a layer via copy. I'm going to do the same thing here with my little guy. So back to my background layer. Always turn all those other layers off whenever you're getting started here. And then you're going to select your little guy. He's pretty excited, because he's about to land on a cockroach. So, clearly he would be excited, right? So I've got that in here, and for the sake of time, I'm not going to make this a great selection. But let's say this is the most wonderful selection that's ever existed in the history of time. Now I'm going to say new layer with a layer mask and hit OK. And now he's on his own little layer. Again, it's going to turn my background layer off, so I'm going to turn that back on. And then let me zoom back out because this is really not the percentage we would be at. All right, so really the only part I have to worry about with him are his legs. So it's okay that the top part's not perfect because it doesn't matter. And I'm going to drag this one up. And there we go. There's my little dude. How about that? So Now we have our little cockroach a little more integrated into this picture. He looks like he belongs a little bit more. Now at this point, my little guy doesn't look like he belongs so great, but that's okay because I can go back in here to select a mask. I can fix any of this that I need to. And I will say, I find the regular plain old lasso to be helpful on these just because you can take out little, chunks at a time like that. And sometimes because I'm just doing a little bit at a time, it's just easier to use that lasso than it is to I don't know, paintbrush it or whatever. But you still have all your normal options. You have all your normal selection tools. You can turn things down and bring them back in if you need to. You could still paint it out or paint it back in. Oops, I'm backwards. Paint it out or paint it back in. It'll still come back in. It just doesn't preview as well as if you'd have just done it the first time through. So anyway, that is just basically the real easy, let's make something go into a picture better method using either layer via copy or new layer via layer mask. Just remember though, that you may sometimes need to adjust your levels because if something doesn't look like it has that same color value as the original picture, you may have to start doing some adjustments. So if I felt like, to be honest, this is not a real cockroach. This is a 3D model. So if I feel like it needed to look a little bit dirtier or a little bit, not so perfect, I could add an adjustment layer. As we always know, I can come in here. I could do, a levels adjustment layer and clip it so it only does it to him. And then I could come in here and make some changes, to make it a little darker because this is kind of dark down in here, or whatever. So don't forget to make those types of adjustments because when you're going to start putting things together, you want the new thing you've added to really look like it belongs there. Now, I wouldn't suggest making any levels adjustments or color adjustments specifically to things that you put on their own layers because if your selection's not perfect, you might get some fringing. But for objects like this cockroach that's just its own thing, certainly those items that you're pulling into the picture probably are going to need some levels adjusting. Or you could have done, I could have done a brightness or contrast adjustment, exposure adjustment. There's just all kinds of different ones that you can do. Here's my brightness and contrast, so I could turn the brightness down, up the contrast so it has darker areas in it, so whatever you feel like looks best. But anyway, this is a good way to make things look like they're behind something that was in the original picture. So the project that we're doing next is this larger than life project, and I borrowed this idea from Franz Dita, whoever that is, who did a whole series of pictures with cats. And I just love the whole idea of this. And it's basically pretty simple. It's taking pictures and combining them in and then putting items in front so that it looks like they belong. I think this is going to be a fun project. I just want you to come up with this one's a little bit weird looking, but come up with some cool ideas. Hopefully you make better selections. This person doesn't always have the greatest selections. This one's super complicated looking. They added some other additional things in here. But we're going to do something similar to this next, a series of images. So we're going to call this the Larger Than Life Project. Again, comes from this person's Facebook page. I need you to pick a small animal or insect and find large images of that animal in various poses. So you want to have a big selection because you saw how many different ones they had. You want to get your poses first and then try to find your places that your animal can be larger than life. We want them to be interacting with objects in some way, shape, or form. So find objects that you can use as a background layer. Want to layer the animal and then either layer via copy those items, or I'm going to put that in here, or in select and mask, we're putting it out to a new layer with layer mask. And that's going to be the one that's going to be probably the best for you on this project. But I want you to have a lot of fun. I want you to come up with some original ideas. You can also add additional things to your picture. So if you wanted to add something else, if I needed a little toy plane dropping this little bomb over here, or, a UFO in the sky or whatever, these don't have to be incredibly realistic. But I would like you to use actual pictures with actual photographs. So not cartoons and stuff like that. But, there's a billboard on here. So if you wanted to add some cartoon character on the billboard, be my guest. Or if you wanted to replace some words on the sign, be my guest. But have fun with the Larger Than Life project. And I look forward to seeing what you come up with.